For the last 31 years, until last year, January the 6th was always tied for my favorite day of the year. January 6th was the most important day, tied for the most important day in our family calendar. Our son Sam was born on January 6th. That's just been a gift that keeps on giving. And then here at the shul, our beloved friend and colleague Joan Mayle, her birthday is January the 6th. And before the pandemic, our office colleagues used to always take Joan out to Legals for her birthday. So at home and at work, January 6th was the best day of the year. And then, of course, came last year's January 6th, and all of a sudden the day became a lot more complicated. And a year later, after marking the anniversary of January 6th this past week, it's clear that the day is the hottest flashpoint in a divided nation. And so this morning I wanted to offer you two different narratives about how to think about January 6th. One is a decline narrative. It means decline. The second is a renewal narrative. It summons forth the renewal of our country. And then I want to offer each of you a question to think about in terms of what this means for yourself as a citizen in our beloved country. First, the decline narrative, and it comes from a really fascinating interview on the Ezra Klein show. Ezra Klein happens to be on paternity leave, and so we had New York Times columnist David Brooks interview Brooks's philosophy professor from the University of Chicago, Leon Kass. And Leon Kass had last year published a 700-page book on the book of Exodus. And David Brooks says to Leon Kass that Exodus is about how you take 12 tribes, 12 fractious, contentious, divided, different tribes, and from 12 tribes, you blend one nation. How does that work? And Leon Kass says, and this is what he says in a 700-page book, that Exodus is the template for taking divided tribes and making of them one nation, and you need three things according to Leon Kass. You need a common story, a common higher purpose, and common rituals that bind people to day-to-day life. And in the case of the Exodus, while there were 12 tribes, they checked all three boxes. Common story, all the Israelites were redeemed from slavery. They all encountered the Exodus together. They were all slaves, and they all saw God's saving power, the 10 plagues. They all got out of Egypt together. Exodus, check that box. Common higher purpose, definitely check that box. Because they were redeemed from slavery to Pharaoh so that they could stand at Sinai, and they stood at the holy mountain, and they received the Torah, and they received their new higher purpose to serve God. And then higher common rituals. Definitely check that box. That's the Mishkan, the tabernacle. They built the tabernacle together, and then they used the tabernacle every day so that they could feel God's presence in their midst. Common story, common higher purpose, common rituals. That's how 12 became one. At which point, David Brooks says, that's great for biblical Israel. What does that mean for contemporary America? And that's where the conversation got sad. And Leon Cass says, common story? Hardly. Common higher purpose? Hardly. Common rituals that bind us together? Hardly. In fact, the lack of common is seen most dramatically in our nation's response to January 6th. About 2/3 of Americans regard it as a direct, scary, frontal assault on democracy. And about 1/3 of Americans regard January 6th as 1776, the spirit of heroic armed resistance against an unjust result. How do you create common anything out of that? And where that left Leon Cass and David Brooks was in a state of despair about our country's future. That's the decline narrative. Now, here's what I want to say about that narrative. It's not implausible. And if you follow the logic of Leon Cass's teaching, and if you just think intuitively that it's important for country citizens to have important stuff in common, one could get to their dire place. The only thing is, it's not implausible, but as Jews, certainly, we can't accept it because we are hardwired for hope. Our national anthem is Hatikva, the hope. After 2,000 years of persecution and wandering, our national anthem is the hope, so we are hardwired for hope. So where is hardwired to be found? So I wanted to offer you a hope narrative, a renewal narrative. And to do this, permit me to be a little bit personal. This coming Tuesday, January the 11th, is an important day in our family because our son-in-law, Davide Russo, this Tuesday on January 11th, is going to be taking his citizenship exam. We were together with our kids at the end of December, and Davide was just studying more than 100 questions that he has to answer for his citizenship exam, and he answered 100 out of 100 correctly. And if he passes this exam, he swears an oath of allegiance to the United States of America, and on Tuesday he will receive his passport as an American citizen. Now, Davide Russo was born and raised in Italy, on the east coast of Italy, I guess that's here, in a small town called San Elipidio a Mare. And it's a town that nobody's heard of unless you're from that town. And Davide loves certain aspects of Italy, and he, of course, loves his friends and family in Italy. But from a young age, he wanted to come to America. And from a young age, he dreamed of becoming an American citizen, and for two reasons. First, from a young age, he knew that he was gay. And it's not okay to be gay in Italy. Back when he was growing up, or even today, Italy remains a very socially conservative country, not okay to be gay. And the second thing is, there's virtually no economic trajectory in Italy. When Davide goes back to his hometown, and he sees his friends from high school, many of them, most of them, almost all of them, are still living in that hometown with their parents. Their entire life is going to be lived within a radius of a few miles. And then when their time comes, they'll be gathered to their eternal resting place in that hometown within a few miles. And Davide wanted more. And so as a high school kid, he taught himself this cool and crucial and evolving new skill, digital photography. And within digital photography, he learned how to do photoshopping, which is to take a digital photograph and enhance it. And he became really expert at photoshopping. And he got a job as a young teenager in Italy. And from that money that he earned, he put himself through college in London. He started learning English at the age of 18. And he continued photoshopping. And he continued applying his skill. And he took that and parlayed it to a job in New York where he got a green card, working in the field of digital photography and photoshopping and managing a team of digital photographers. And that's how he supported himself in New York in his 20s. And he parlayed that into business school, where he met and then married our son, Nat. And for all those years, he's been in America working and in America learning on a green card. And this coming Tuesday, if he passes this test, he swears the oath and gets a passport as an American citizen. And here's what's just so interesting about talking to Davide about America, which is he uses words that most Americans who are born here no longer use. And he sees an America that most people who are born here no longer see. For example, Davide talks about he loves America's commitment to the equality and dignity of all of its citizens. I don't hear that so much anymore. But from Davide, it's true, a commitment to equality and dignity of all of its citizens. And I ask him, where do you see that? We all know all the many challenges. Where do you see that? And he says, in Italy, gay people are attacked in the middle of the day without consequence. There are no hate crime laws in Italy because Italian legislators don't want hate crime laws in Italy. But in America, imperfect as it is, we all know this, there are hate crime laws that protect vulnerable minorities. He loves that about our country. Here's another thing that he will say, he will talk about. I haven't heard this word in 100 years, but he uses this word all the time. The American dream. He talks about the American dream being alive. Who uses that anymore? My son-in-law. Because in Italy, he would be running his family's pizzeria. And now in America, he's working in Silicon Valley. So Davide reminds me of a renewal narrative because he teaches me something that I had forgotten, which is that what's wrong with our country should not blind us to what's right with our country. What's wrong with our country should not blind us to what's also right with our country. Our commitment to the equality and dignity of all of our citizens is not perfect, but it's a work in progress, and it's true for our gay children who are much better in America than they would be anywhere else. There's not economic opportunity for all, but there is economic opportunity for some. And so I'm reminded that it's the problems that always get the attention. The blessings are there, just no one talks about them as much. But they're there and they're also true. So where are we left? We have a decline narrative that is plausible, and we have a renewal narrative that is plausible, and neither one is inevitable. And here's what I want to say. I think the resolution of this is on us. That is to say that January 6th offers us an opportunity to think with fresh eyes about what does it mean to be a citizen in our country. Perhaps that's a question you hadn't thought about a lot. Perhaps citizenship in our country is something we might have taken for granted. But maybe all of this tumult invites us to think with fresh eyes. What can I do to renew? What can I do to renew our country, to make it better and stronger? And act as if the welfare of our country hinges on your answer to that question, because it does. When I was a kid growing up, my favorite child story was called The Five Chinese Brothers. Five Chinese Brothers is built on a classic Chinese folktale. And it tells of five Chinese brothers who lived in a time of danger and uncertainty. And lives were at risk. But each of the five Chinese brothers had a special skill and a special gift. One Chinese brother could swallow the whole sea. And a second Chinese brother had legs that could extend indefinitely. And another Chinese brother had a neck that could turn from flesh to iron. And the fourth Chinese brother was immune from burning, could emerge alive from a furnace. And the fifth Chinese brother could hold his breath forever. And each of these Chinese brothers used their gift in a time of danger and uncertainty to save life. And here's the thing. We're in a time of danger and uncertainty. But this is not a children's story. And this is not a folklore or a fable. There are people, many people today, who are using their gifts in a time of danger and uncertainty to save life. We have doctors going into hospitals. The hospitals are short-staffed. The hospitals are Omicron-riddled. The doctors are fatigued and exhausted. And they're still going in and they're still healing. And they're still role modeling commitment to the highest ideals in the hardest time. That's real. We have teachers who are still teaching in a time that is like no other. We have children in our community who are members of the armed forces. And they're putting their life on the line for us and for our country that they love and that is real. So here's the good news. And here is the intimidating news about January 6th, 1 year later, and it is the same news. Our land is in our hands, which means that the question of the hour is, what can I do to renew? Shabbat Shalom.